this, and this is what your research papers can fix, right, is you want to, is instead of assuring me of a certain presupposition that you have, right, I want you to prove it to me. Don't jump to any conclusions about your opponent being wrong because their values contrast with yours, right? Show how the conclusions that their values get them to contradict the facts, right? Get me some facts that undermine their position, and don't only tell me that it has to be the case that you're right or that they're wrong. All right? Does everybody see that in this paragraph? Because that ties back into what you guys are talking about in terms of the facts, right? The fast way around this is you want to compare. I mean, if the comparison is between Europe and the United States, and we think that's an effective way to attack this economic argument, right? Then start bringing in some statistics about how this rail system has promoted growth in the European Union, right? I mean, they're out there. So if you're going to make a comparison, like grab that data and use it. We'll jump to Lee's really quickly, right? Because this is something that a lot of you did, where you're talking about what Jonathan Cohn did, right? And you say that he's got a good argument, except that he says, in stating that there appears to be a short supply of reasonable people in the Republican Party, Cohn reveals his deep bias in his own assertions and introduces doubt as to the ability to completely examine the subject, right? That's not necessarily true, right? Say someone called Glenn Beck an anti-Semite after he showed a prominent Jewish financier as a puppet master controlling world politics by infusing a bunch of money into shady political campaigns, right? That would be accurate, right? It wouldn't be nice, but it would be accurate. Okay? And so I'm not saying that, geez, sorry, it's jumping around here. I'm not saying that pointing at that arguing that the opposing side is completely irrational is a particularly effective way of going about things if it's all that you do, right? And I'm not saying that it is the case that there are no reasonable voices in the Republican Party, okay? What I'm saying is it doesn't on its face discredit someone for them to say, gee, Jesus, nobody's listening to the facts, right? What that is that's a falsifiable claim, right? It's not it's not non-interrogatable, right? It's not an article of belief. He's saying that the other side isn't looking at the data, right? At which point you can check it, right? You can look at all of these different sides and say, do people just have different data sets, right? Or is it actually the case, do people have different data sets? Is one side using a completely discredited data set? See global warming, right? You can actually look at different things. You can actually look at different cases where sometimes people just aren't paying attention to what's in front of them, right? Yeah, so which is just to say that instead of saying that it totally discredits Cohn's argument to argue that the other side is being unreasonable, use that as your starting point. Say Cohn accuses the other side of being totally unreasonable. Well, let's check that out, right? Over here we can see this person using this outdated study, but Cohn's numbers are themselves somewhat mistaken, right? As we see at the bottom of his article, where he says, "Oh, I've been informed that not everyone believes that high-speed rail is a panacea," right? I think that's the irony of his article, is that he says, people aren't accepting that everyone believes this. What's up with that? And then at the bottom of his article, he's got this little asterisk, and it's more like, not everybody actually believes this. I think that's what discredits his argument, not the fact that he's attacking the other side, okay? And over break, I'm going to have you read this Jay Rosen article at pressthink.org. It's this really great piece that points out a bunch of different logical fallacies that we have in the way that media treat information today. One of them being the idea of false equivalencies, right? Which is that if a Democrat says something, right, then necessarily there must be an opposing and equally legitimate Republican point of view. And if a Republican says something, there necessarily must be an opposing and equally legitimate Democratic point of view. What's the problem with that? Is that if they're always equally legitimate, then we can't ever pick winners, right? Like I swear to God, you feel like if Sarah Palin said the moon is made of green cheese, you feel like Wolf Blitzer would have a special the next night, like where a bunch of Democratic operatives come on and debate whether or not the moon is made of green cheese, right? As opposed to just saying it's not, right? Or from the other side of things, if someone makes a radical claim from the Democratic Party, in fact, instead of fact checking it, they'll fill up airspace by having a round table debating it, right? That's not useful, right? Plus it always creates opposition where there might not have been any, right? Okay. You guys want to do one more? Thanksgiving break. A little gravy on your turkey. A little cranberry sauce on your mashed potatoes.
I have to leave by next class, so.
Fair enough. All right. I'll send you that article. Everyone have a great break.